Summer Sweetheart, Chapter 50. Adam's Carl's father? Trevor, the rich and a powerful son who had attracted countless women in Rostonville when he was young. Alisa was stunned for a few seconds before reacting and said awkwardly, "Hello." She couldn't call him dad anyway. "If you have time, let's have a meal together tonight." Trevor's voice was calm and deep, revealing a kind of peace that has been baptized by the years. Although it is with a commanding tone, it is not repulsive. Alisa understood that although Trevor's words sounded like asking her, she couldn't refuse. She humbled, "I have time. I'll let the driver pick you up and see you tonight." He finished speaking in a hurry and hung up the phone. From the beginning to the end, Trevor's tone was very calm, but he had an unquestionable breath. Alisa threw away her mobile phone and hurried out to take the car to Carl's villa. Trevor said that if the driver was to pick her up, the driver would definitely go directly to Carl's villa. Alisa stood at the gate looking up at the Carl's villa. The villa is built on the mountainside with sparsely populated surroundings. The white villa stands quietly among the trees, which looks a bit strange. Alisa was taken over last time and she didn't pay much attention to this villa. Now the more she looks at it, the more it feels a bit evil. A chill rose from the soles of her feet. Alisa turned pale in the winter cold. She abruptly retracted her outstretched foot, trying to reduce the frost, just waiting at the gate. Before long, a black car stopped at the entrance of the villa. Alisa turned her head curiously and saw a middle-aged man with a gentle face coming out of the car. When he saw Alisa's face clearly, there was obviously a flash of surprise in his eyes, but he didn't show it at all. He stood still in front of Alisa, nodding slightly with a respectful expression. "Madam, I am Powell. Mr. Adams sent me to pick you up for dinner." "It was the driver Trevor sent to pick her up for dinner." "Excuse me." Alisa smiled at him, her mouth split wide, looking a little dull. The expression on Powell's face was slightly startled, but in a moment he returned to normal. He turned and opened the door. "Young lady, please get in the car." Afterwards, he walked around and drove away. When the car left, only a slit curtain was open on the second floor of the villa and it was pulled open with a brush sound. Smith glanced in the direction where the car was leaving and asked the unpredictable Carl, who stood behind him, "Boss, do you really want your wife to see Mr. Adams like this? Otherwise?" His eyes were deep and he put his hand in the pockets of the suit pants and said with a deep voice, "She is just an ugly and stupid woman. What can Trevor do?" "But Madam is acting stupid." "It's not an ability to pretend to make everyone believe." After Carl said this quietly, he turned and left. Alisa was brought to a high-end restaurant. Powell led her to the door of the box, stretched out his hand and made a gesture of please. "Mr. Adam is waiting for you inside." "Yeah." After Alisa finished speaking, she added slowly, "Thank you, Uncle Powell." Powell watched her enter and after closing the door, he didn't know what he thought of and shook his head slightly. At the table, a middle-aged man with an elegant temperament is looking through the menu. Hearing the movement, he put down the menu and raised his head. Alisa thought that the makeup of her own soil burn would at least make him frown or dissatisfied, but he just said kindly, "Are you Alisa?" Chapter 16. Alisa didn't expect that the person in charge of such a wealthy and powerful family would be such a pleasant person. She was stunned for a moment before she said, I am Alisa." This day was not a pretense. It didn't surprise her. "Don't be restrained. You married into the Adams family. You are a member of the Adams family and my half-daughter." While talking, Trevor picked up the kettle next to her and poured her a glass of water. When at Hunt's house, Colin basically didn't look at her straight, and Russell's attention was also on other two siblings. She had never been treated so gently by any elder, and she was little flattered for a while. Alisa took the cup. "Thank you." "You can call me Daddy like Carl," Trevor said while looking at her calmly. His looks are a little invisible and his reaction is a little slow, although restrained but polite. He is a simple and kind-hearted child. "Dad." Alisa cried out hesitantly. Trevor smiled and said apologetically, "You and Carl are married, and you are wrong for not having them married. You should have gone back to the old house for dinner with Carl today, but Carl, because of his mother, there is a bump in his heart, and he has been reluctant to return to his old house. You will enlighten him more in the future." The Adams family is a large family that has been passed down for hundreds of years, following the tradition of 3 generations under one roof. It is said that the old house of the Adams family is priceless. Someone once tentatively bid hundreds of billions to buy the house of the Adams family. But in the end, only Carl was rescued. As for Carl's mother, there are many sayings. Some say she is dead, some say she is not dead, and some say she was defiled by the kidnapper. Alisa looked up at Trevor, hesitated, and said, "But I haven't seen him yet." In the next half sentence, she said quietly. She noticed that after Trevor listened to her again, his expression changed slightly. Before, Trevor didn't ask Carl anymore but asked some questions about Alisa's life with concern. Alisa answered honestly one by one, speaking slowly, looking dull but sincere. When leaving, Trevor still asked Powell to send her back to Carl's villa. Powell sent her to the gate of the villa, and he left after watching Alisa enter. At this time, Alisa just recalled Trevor seemed to be testing her before. After another thought, she felt wrong again. He was more like testing Carl. Although she hadn't met Carl, she could feel that the relationship between father and son was not good, and there were many contradictions. Trevor said that Carl had a knot in his heart because of his mother, but his mother was no longer there when he was kidnapped more than 10 years ago. Is it because of the kidnapping that he had a rift with Trevor? "Young lady," Alisa was drawn back to her mind by the bodyguard's voice. She looked up at the talking bodyguard. This bodyguard was familiar and went to pick up her at the Hunt's house that day. The bodyguard nodded slightly and said in a flat tone, "Master wants to see you." Alisa suspected that she had heard it wrong. She was stunned for 3 seconds before she said, "Master? Carl?" "Yes, Master is waiting for you in the study."